Good day, everyone. It's Evelyn Ackah from the Ask Canada Immigration Law Firm podcast. And I have the pleasure today of welcoming my new friend, Lars Kushner, to our podcast. Welcome, Lars.
Hi, Evelyn. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast today.
Thanks so much. And I want to give people a little bit of information about you. So I'm going to share your background a little. So Lars is the founder and owner of Kushner Legal Corporation based in California. He has also been recognized as a lawyer of distinction. He is a well-established attorney and a member of the California State Bar, and he brings extensive legal experience in the area of estate planning and estate administration. And his distinguished career includes starting a law firm in Vancouver, our mutual hometown in British Columbia. And then he also now started his own law firm in California. So, Lars, I want to talk to you about all the things. And specifically, because we're talking about immigration and estate planning and cross-border activity, what led you to become an immigrant yourself? Let's start there.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I have always wanted to be a lawyer, and it's not something that traditionally you can cross borders with. So I had to work hard on thinking about that. But I always wanted to live in a warm climate. A little bit about my background is I kind of lived all over Canada.
Oh,
I was born in Vancouver. I lived in Edmonton, and then my parents decided we should move somewhere colder, and we moved to Whitehorse
oh my God.
and then down to Victoria. And after that, I realized I was ready for a sunnier climate. So my best friend from Canada moved to California. I came down here a few times. I realized it was a place I really wanted to be, and I began the process of trying to get certified. And I knew, it's a close enough flight to Vancouver. I would still be able to maintain my professional relationships up there. And I've, of course, maintained my license in British Columbia as well.
That's so great. That is so cool. That's so hard. I mean, I think about doing the California bar and I'm like, it's
Yeah,
just,
it was an undertaking. My percentage of passing, I think, was like well below, or should have been well below 30% or something like that as a foreign
God.
educated, non-American student. But I'm
Yeah,
glad it's behind me and I'm glad I don't have to do it again.
I'm glad too. That is so fabulous. So where in California do you live and practice?
So I live in West Hollywood,
Yeah,
and my practice is just about 2 miles down the road in Beverly Hills. Now,
perfect.
in LA time, that can take anywhere between 20 to 40 minutes, depending on traffic. It's why we measure distance in minutes, not miles here.
Yes. Lots of traffic. I know that from LA. Oh my God. So listen, when you decided what kind of practice area you wanted to choose, what brought you to estates and that whole area? What was the motivation for that area?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I started my career. I articled under a firm that did a lot of personal injury work, and we shared space with family lawyers. And I thought the family law work was really interesting. I really liked seeing the details of people's lives. So I
Hmm.
started doing that. And then I realized I didn't really like being in the mess of people's divorces. And I
Yeah.
got referred some estate work. And in Canada, I did primarily estate litigation. In British Columbia, we have the Wills, Estates, and Succession Act, which is a very unique piece of legislation that leads itself to a lot of wills variation challenges.
Mhm.
Um, and I realized a lot of people could avoid this mess with proper estate planning. And I was a little tired of the grind of litigation. So I started
Yeah.
switching my focus towards planning and helping people ensure that they are set up to avoid litigation and potential conflict down the line. And
Mhm.
what I like about the planning field is you get to be someone's lawyer for life. You get to
Yes.
be with them through all the different exciting, sometimes tragic, but hopefully just exciting changes in their lives. Maybe they
Hmm.
get married, maybe they have a kid, maybe they have a grandkid, and they get to
Yeah.
come and see you. You get to be a presence in their life. You maybe assist their children as well, and you build these strong personal relationships.
Oh, I love that so much. I feel like that about immigration because you start off and you're working for them, getting them the visitor visa, the work permit, and then it's permanent residence, and then it's citizenship, and then it's their referrals. And so it's a really great area, I think, for you. It sounds like you found your passion. And I love the idea of helping people before the problems occur. Like that is the
Yeah,
best kind of
that's what we
lawyer.
try and do. It's really about issue spotting, getting to know your clients, doing really detailed intake work with them,
Yes.
and finding out what is personal and passionate to them. You're talking
Hmm.
about people's legacies, especially if they don't have children, what
Hmm.
charitable causes they might want to contribute to, what
Yeah.
organizations they want to support.
Yeah.
and things like that. And of course, people's pets always come up in immigration and sorry, in estate
In
planning.
estate planning. Oh my God. So, since you run your own firm like I do, tell me about some of the principles and values that drive your approach to delivering personalized legal solutions, and how do you ensure you keep high quality service, at a lower price point because you're not necessarily competing with the larger firms. You offer something different.
Yeah, so I think the answer is actually in your question, and it comes down to personalized service. I think people get burned out when they sign up with big firms when they're passed from paralegal to paralegal, from assistant to assistant, from lawyer to lawyer. What I try and deliver for my clients is really a start to finish total experience. I will personally do the intake with you. I will give you my email. Of course, you'll have my assistant's email as well and my administration's email as well, but I will go ahead and work directly with you from start to finish, and I will be there signing your documents with you. I've taken it to the point that I actually got licensed as a notary myself because I didn't like having to rely on, in California, we have to use notaries to sign these documents. Attorneys and lawyers do not qualify as notaries as they do in British Columbia. So
God.
you have to bring in a notary. So I got licensed as a notary myself to ensure that everything can be taken care of. We try and offer our clients white glove service from the beginning, making sure all of their questions are answered. And to your question about price points, what we do is we really try and use technology to our
Yes.
advantage. We
Yes.
use the top of the market planning software. It's called Wealth Counsel. I think it's the best software out there. Always up to date. We're always making sure that our documents are the highest quality documents. And that's the feedback we've gotten from our clients who have taken their documents to financial advisors, to their banks. They're always talking about how comprehensive our trusts are, how everything is drafted in clear, plain English, but
Yeah.
we cover every possible contingency.
I love that. I've heard great things about Wealth Counsel. So my other friends that do this area, that seems to be the top of the line. And, it's expensive, but it's a worthwhile investment for a law firm that wants to provide this kind
Yeah,
of.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah, good for you. So listen, given your expertise in estate planning, both in Canada, and the US, how do you compare the two? What are your thoughts on like snowbirds in California? Kind of give me a sense of who your international or immigration related clients would be.
Yeah, so there's sort of two different branches. There are the snowbirds who are Canadian residents who are just coming down and spending a few months of the year here every year, typically in areas like Palm Springs, outside of
Mhm.
San Diego. Those tend to be very popular here in
Yeah.
California. They are typically not looking to become permanent residents or US citizens, and their concern is primarily how does their US asset work in tandem with their Canadian estate plan?
Hmm.
Right. And how are they protected if they have a property in Palm Springs that is sometimes used as a rental? Is it in an LLC? What is their exposure? What happens if one of the partners dies? How is
Hmm.
it titled? These are all issues that come up. I recently had a consult with someone who unfortunately had not titled her property as joint tenants with right of survivorship. Her husband passed away, sadly, and there was an issue as to how to get it put into her name.
Hmm.
The second branch of clients I have are Canadians who have chosen to become permanent residents and obtained a green card or are in that process and are potentially going to become US citizens.
Hmm.
That perspective, you sort of, the question that I ask them, and it's a little morbid, but I am in a morbid adjacent area of law, is where do you want to die? Because
Yeah.
that's what we have to plan for. And what I mean by that is where is your permanent residence going to be? Where is your home going to be? Are you
Hmm.
planning on moving your assets from Canada to the United States? Are you planning on spending your life in the United States? Because where you domicile is going to affect the laws when you pass away in terms of probate and non-probate planning.
Okay.
In British Columbia, at least, it's not a trust-friendly planning environment. The vast majority of people use wills-based plans. There is something called an alter ego trust. It's really only available to senior Canadians. So for the vast majority of Canadians, they're still using will-based plans. In
Oh, base.
California, it is the exact opposite.
Wow.
California, if you at the threshold right now for a small estate is 184,000. So if you're over 184,000 or you own property, you want to set up a trust.
The
It will.
trust.
So it is really quite different,
Mhm.
but interesting to navigate the complexities of both.
Oh, that's so fabulous. It's great that you have that experience because some of our clients move down there and they don't think about things like planning a new will or what are you going to do with your assets. And, for us, it's always partnering and finding people that we can refer them to because it's not what we do. So in your line of work, Lars, who's a part of your circle in terms of who you work with? Like you just mentioned something like you mentioned financial advisors or financial planners. Who else do you
Yes.
kind of work with as a team to be able to provide that full service to your clients?
So definitely financial advisors, bankers,
Yes.
real estate agents. Those are kind of the big, and CPAs. Those are the big three to make sure that everything is tied up. I always say to my clients, take your trust to your CPA, take your trust to your financial advisor. Get them to look at it. Get them to look at it before you sign it, even so that they don't have any questions, because they're the ones that are going to be interacting with it at all as well. And we want to make sure that everyone is on the same page as to what's going to happen. We
Okay.
want to give them a copy. Obviously, it's up to the
Yeah.
client to do that because of confidentiality reasons, but we encourage our clients if they're comfortable to do so, especially if it's someone they've had a long-term relationship with, just so if something happens, an unforeseen tragedy,
Yeah.
the thing that we're most concerned about here is if there's an unforeseen tragedy where, a couple both perish in the same car accident. That's where the planning needs to be there. Because if
Yeah.
one partner passes, you can make adjustments, you can make changes, but you're really concerned about those circumstances. So you want to make sure that everyone is looped in and everyone is on the same page and everyone knows what's going on and that
Mhm.
everyone's documents are up to date, right? The
Yeah.
amount of times I've had someone come in with a will or a trust that needs to be reviewed and it's like 20 years old.
Oh my goodness.
And then I asked him, is this the most recent one? Well, I might have actually done another one. And it's like, oh no, no, no. Let's start here and revoke the old one and
Yeah.
bring everyone up to speed and send this to everyone.
Yes, I think that's great advice. How often do you think that clients should, review their wills with you?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question. What typically we always say every 3 to 5 years, you should
Mhm.
pull it out, have a look at it. If it still looks good, put it away. And if not, give us a call. But we're actually now proactively initiating complimentary 3-year reviews for all
Oh,
our
wow.
clients, bringing them into our office, getting the chance to update their contact information, update
Mhm.
their successor trustees' contact information and just get a chance to chat with them and find out, are your life circumstances the same? Are there
Mhm.
grandkids now? Do you have a new passion? Or in the case of people who don't have large families and they've decided to leave their estate to their friends, are
Yeah.
you still friends with this person?
Oh my God. Can you imagine
No, it's not an imagine. It happens all the time.
being friends and they're getting everything left over? That would be
People
crazy.
forget, especially if you have a large estate, you don't have a traditional nuclear
Yes.
family, you may leave 10% to 10 people, and
Yes.
two of those people you're not in contact with anymore. As
Yes.
our lives change and our relationships evolve, people come in and out. And
Yes.
we want to make sure that our clients are happy and that their plans are up to date.
That's really helpful. That's so great, Lars. I mean, I agree with you. I have a great person here in Alberta. We visit every 3 to 5 years. Anything changes. I think people don't think about that when they move over the border. Whether they're coming to Canada or the US, that's one of the first things we say is you need to get a will because you don't
Yeah.
know where you're going to die. You don't know where things are going to happen. And I have a family friend who has a cross-border immigration and tax and wills, and it was a whole thing. He had a U.S. trust. He died in Canada. He was a permanent resident, and moving that U.S. trust to Canada, where the widow was, it was brutal. He did not
Yeah.
plan it properly. It took 2 years to get that into a Canadian trust, and you just think like how significant that those funds would have been for her in that period
Right.
of time. Plus grief.
Especially in that time.
Exactly. Yeah, I think what you're doing is so important. Do you have a lot of clients that are dual residents that maybe are both Canadian and US? And in that case, what do you do?
Yeah, so again, it really comes down to the question of where do you expect to be?
Okay.
Where are the bulk of your assets? Where are you planning on passing away? And I know
Hmm.
that's hard to sort of plan and
Hard.
foresee, but for the dual citizens, the real question is, where are you spending the majority of your time? Are you a US tax resident? Is a great question,
Yes.
right? Like, are
Yes.
you spending more than 6 months of the year here? Then we
Mhm.
should be planning for the US. If
Okay.
not, and you're only here sort of temporarily, and your plan is to return to Canada for whatever reason, then you should be looking at planning from a primarily Canadian perspective. The
Okay.
other issue that comes up also is, where are your family members located and where are your children located?
Mhm.
Because at least here in Canada, I can only obviously speak to
Yeah.
California law. I know there's snowbirds in Florida and snowbirds in
Yeah.
Arizona and all over kind of the Sun Belt. But from a California perspective, when we draft trusts, we need a US based trustee. So do you have the option to
Mm.
have a US based trustee? If it's not a
Okay.
family member, because maybe your family is still overseas or in Canada, do you have a financial advisor you can use? Would you be comfortable naming your bank? Because there are tax consequences to having non-US based trustees that are quite substantial.
Wow. Yeah, I think the tax piece is so huge when it comes to estate planning, is really coordinating those two to make sure that you're cutting taxes as much as possible. You're actually giving what you want to give to people as opposed to it's all going to the tax man. I can't.
Yeah,
Yeah. Do you do any probate or is that a very separate
it's
unit?
a small part of my practice. I mean,
Okay.
our plan is to avoid probate at all costs,
Of
right? That
course,
good
of course.
planning avoids probate.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we also in California have something called a Hegstad petition, which is, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty here, but essentially, if you intend to fund an asset in your trust and you don't do so, but there's documentation that you had intended to fund it, you can go
Mhm.
to court on one of these petitions and have it put into the trust essentially retroactively. So
Wow.
we're trying to avoid probate. If you had someone do a trust for you and you end up in probate, something has gone wrong.
Something has gone wrong, absolutely. So in terms of, I was just going to ask you a question about your experience when you came to the States. How different was that for you, kind of starting all over again? How was that? Because I feel like that really relates to a lot of our clients, whether they're professionals like yourself, business owners, starting all over, which means starting your credit rating, everything is different, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it
Right.
was a challenge. I will tell you, I went to go and get a credit card from Bank of America. Great relationship with
Yeah.
him now. And he gave me a card and he gave me a card with a $500 limit. And then he asked me if I wanted a second card. I said, for who? I'm going to spend this in one dinner. And then assured me not to worry. It was the same kind of card he had when he was in high school. Now, I
Oh,
was in my 30s at this
that's
point. So,
crazy. Yeah, it is.
um, it was definitely a challenge. I will say, and this isn't a plug, I'm not sponsored by them, but using a company like American Express, which
Mm,
has offices all over the world and all over the US and Canada, for any of your clients who are
yeah.
considering moving from the US to Canada, is extremely helpful because they
Okay.
will be able to grant you a card, maybe not the same card that you had, but they'll be able to
Yeah.
grant you a card, and within a year, you'll be able to be back to where you are and have that same level of card. So if you do have clients who are considering
Nice.
that, I would encourage them to get an American Express.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing, is establish a relationship with the bank. You
Mhm.
need a permanent address when you move here. It doesn't have to be your address forever, but you need an address. It can't just be a P.O. box. No one's
Yes.
going to deal with you without an address.
Mhm.
Go and get your social done.
Yeah.
The one for me that was from a practical perspective, being a Canadian, was the most confusing was the health insurance.
Oh, yeah. Oh my, it
Oh, wow. Like,
must make you miss a little bit of Canada.
oh, definitely. It just trying to sort through the different plans and what's an HMO,
It's
what's a PPO.
expensive. It's expensive. It's different. I mean, obviously there are pros and cons because I hear in the States, and I've been sick in the States. I think we went to Disneyland once and I had this awful hacking cough. And finally my family was like, go. So I went to clinic. You walk in, the first thing they ask for is for your credit card.
Right, exactly,
And I was
exactly.
in and out in 15 minutes with a puffer and I was healed. So it's like, I think that's great. But I mean, not everybody can do that. So there are some benefits of Canada, but I think the speed of things in the US is just unbelievable, right?
Yeah, the speed is remarkable. If you have good insurance and
Yeah.
you're fortunate enough to have good insurance, and you can get treated and done in a day,
Mhm.
it's quite amazing. I had a knee injury and I had to get a cortisone shot and I was in and
Yeah.
out, and
Makes a big difference. You're not waiting weeks and weeks like sometimes we do here. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh my
Exactly.
God. So are you planning on becoming a US citizen? Are you going to do both?
Yeah, down the line
Yeah.
for sure. I mean,
Good.
my practice is now, I would say 90% here.
Yeah,
I've been living here for over 5 years. It's my expectation that I'll be here for the rest of my life.
for
So
sure. That's excellent.
definitely.
I remember during COVID hearing from all my friends who do estates work that the whole notarizing of things and getting certificate, things signed. How did you deal with that? Does California allow for virtual signings or no?
So they don't, but a virtual notary in another state can e-notarize a California document. It's a little complicated. It's a little
Okay.
complicated. We are on our way to allowing for online notarizations, and there are some exceptions.
Hmm.
But as a general rule, no. But a funny story about that actually is I had a good friend from Toronto who's moving to Houston
Yep.
and bought a house virtually, toured it,
Yeah,
never
yeah.
was there. And there was an issue at the time with getting documents across the border. He couldn't get documents across the border. They had to get them signed. So he had to do a power of attorney, and I had to buy his house for him and sign all the documents. And he just sold his house. I just saw him a couple weeks ago, and he said, "We're keeping all those documents as a memento because your
That's
name is on
hilarious.
all of them."
That's hilarious. I think that is
Um, but
incredibly
it does
creative.
bring me to a more serious point, actually, which I wanted to bring up,
Yeah.
which is to your question about if someone's planning on moving. One thing to consider doing, let's say you're going from the Canada to the US, like I was,
Mhm.
is putting a power of attorney in place
Yes.
in Canada for your Canadian assets.
Absolutely.
Naming someone who can handle that stuff on the ground. I had to sell a condo. I wasn't
Hmm.
able to come back up and deal with it. So
Of
I
course.
granted a power of attorney.
Yeah.
That person took care of it. Having someone to be able to do your banking, it has to be someone you trust. And of course, you can impose restrictions on it. But that would be, I think, my number one piece of advice to your clients would be execute a power of attorney before you leave the country, just so that you have someone there who can tie things up so that you don't have to physically fly back.
Back and forth. That is great advice. I've not thought about that before. I mean, even if you're planning on moving, or a lot of our clients do the cross border and they're going to be working for, in Houston or California or whatever for 3 to 5 years. That's a great idea. That's a great
Yeah,
idea.
I mean, it's something I would consider recommending to all of your clients. It's
Yeah.
not an expensive thing to do, and it just gives you that peace of mind and the security that, okay, if I need to get some funds transferred, I need money
Mhm.
moved, I need a wire of my
Yeah.
Canadian funds, this is a way to get it accomplished with minimal disruption to your life.
That is wonderful. So listen, Lars, as we're starting to wrap up, is there anything else you want to share about your firm and how people can reach you, connect with you, and what the experience of being a client would be like? Like if they reached out to you, what would that look like?
Yeah, so great question. The best way to reach out is via our website. We have a contact form on the website. The website is www.kushnerlegal.com.
Great.
If you reach out on the website, I will probably reach out to you directly. And typically, the way the process works is we will bring you in for a complimentary consultation in our office in Beverly Hills. There's free
Mhm.
2-hour parking just 2 blocks away across from John and Vinny's. I always tell people that. Parking in LA is a challenge. Um, and then if you're interested in retaining us, we will go ahead and discuss our fee structure. We use a flat fee, transparent pricing for
Yes,
everything,
love
so you
flat
know
fee.
exactly what you're paying.
Yeah.
And then we'll go through the steps. And as I said, the one thing we offer is personalized white glove service. We will take care of everything from start to finish, setting up your trust, answering any questions that you have. And if you have some property, we go ahead and we'll go ahead and get that recorded and retitled in the name of your trust, because that is
That's
a
fabulous.
critical step that some people miss.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous. I love that free parking. So you have to see your clients in person then. Is that what you're saying?
No, not
No?
necessarily.
Okay.
Happy to serve clients and meet with people over Zoom or over the phone. I personally, I like face-to-face meetings. I like getting to know people in person, having the chance to sit down with them. But a lot of introductory meetings are conducted over Zoom. I have clients that are super busy and just don't have time
Yeah.
to come in. I'm happy to do virtual meetings.
Okay.
But if I have my preference, I'll
For
bring you in my
sure.
office and give you a coffee and we can sit down and chat.
Yeah, no, I think it's great when you can. But I was thinking, since you service all of California, if somebody's in Northern California and, maybe not till the last signing, that, maybe you can do some of it like this, right?
Yeah, no, Of
Okay.
course. And also, listen, we can, I overnighted documents to Santa Barbara last week for one of my
Mhm.
clients. You know, we can send you a binder. You can bring in your own notary if it's not possible for you to come. We'll send you a perfectly tabbed binder with sign here stickers everywhere and make sure that it gets done properly for you. And we're
That
happy to
sounds
sit on a
perfect.
call or on a Zoom with you during that signing just to
Yeah.
make sure no questions come up.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. This has been really interesting. I love hearing about your immigration story, Lars, but also starting over and obviously being successful and finding and creating the life that you want and the practice that you want. I think it's so important. And I want to just thank you so much for sharing your story and your expertise with our listeners.
Thank you so much for your time and for having me on. And if you're ever in California, let me know.
I will. Looking forward to seeing another Vancouverite. Take good care.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
You too.